Falter, welcome back. Irish Granny Tarot. This is video number 3, Sasquatch Nation, and we're starting chapter 6, which is called Swamp Apes of Swamp Nation. In the South, Sasquatch is not Sasquatch. Sasquatch is called skunk ape, swamp boogers, woolly boogers. Stories began in early Florida with an ape-like creature with an odor in the swamps called the wild man. The Seminoles called it Esti Kapkake, the cannibal giant. In 1818, in Apalachicola, Florida, they talk about a 5-foot-tall baboon. In 1829, a wild man kills hunters. 2 guys exploring the Okefenokee found an 18-inch footprint with a 6-foot stride, and they heard all these native stories, but they camped in the area anyway. They were awakened by screams and something walking around and had a bad night. They fled at dawn, and they went back to their settlement in Ware County and told everybody, and they formed a party of 9 men, and this group went out for 2 weeks. They followed giant footprints. Then they decided to go ahead and camp and continue hunting this monster in the morning. They were attacked by the monster, covered in hair, that night. They shot at it, and the monster ripped 5 of their heads off. I'm not making this up. The rest of them kept shooting, and it finally died. It was 13 feet tall, but they heard more screams in the night, and they fled. In 1884, at the Okeechee Pond wetland in Jackson County, which is a vast cypress swamp, there were many wild man sightings. One was captured in August of 84. It could not be identified by scientists in Tallahassee. Love to know what happened there. 1938, in Anniston, Alabama, a wild man in the swamp chased off dogs, scared farmers, and there was a family of 3 Bigfoot creatures. Posse hunted it. It was shaped like an ape with a face like a human. It had hair all over its body, and it was 5 feet tall. In 47, in Lakeland, Florida, a 4-year-old reported seeing a Bigfoot by a tree watching him, and there were other sightings in the area. In 48, in Newport Richey, Florida, a white Bigfoot approached a guy who was pulled over on the side of the road. It got to within 20 feet of him, chattering at him, and the guy fled. He thought that perhaps this creature was defending roadkill that the guy was looking at. So this is a different story from the one before. This guy pulled over to look at the roadkill. He didn't pull over to look at the Bigfoot who was looking at the roadkill, like the previous story. The white Bigfoot seem to be outcasts and often are found lurking around dumpsters or roadkill. It's kind of sad. In 1950, in Newport Richey, a woman who was hanging laundry was chased around her yard and managed to get into the house and lock herself in, and the Bigfoot left. August 1st of 1955 in Georgia, in the Kinchafoonee Creek, a 20-year-old cutting grass along the highway was confronted by a 6-foot-tall, shaggy, gray ape man. It was grunted like a wild pig. He fought it off with the scythe he was using to cut the grass, and he fled to his Jeep. The creature reached in the window of the Jeep and scratched him. He jumped out of the Jeep and fled into the woods, and then he doubled back and got into the Jeep and drove away. In 58, in Brooksville, Florida, a truck driver who was asleep on the side of the road said long arms reached in and grabbed him and pulled him out of the cab of the truck. He screamed, and nearby dogs, who just fortunately happened to be milling about out there, chased the Bigfoot off. 65, in Arkansas, a 14-year-old shot at the face of the Fook monster, an 8-foot-tall Bigfoot, which ran away. Later in Tarrytown, Georgia, a guy saw a Bigfoot with a damaged face. In 1966 in Brookville, Florida, north of Tampa, the area is called Skunk Ape Central. A woman saw a Bigfoot swinging its arms at her dogs, and it chased her into her house. In the summer of 1966 in Elfers, Florida, which is near there, a guy saw and smelled a Bigfoot. And in December of 1966, in the same area as where the woman saw the Bigfoot getting at her dogs, 2 hunters saw a Bigfoot and reported it. 7th of November, 1966, two guys driving in Winona, Mississippi saw a 7-foot Bigfoot by the side of the road. 1967, a Bigfoot was spotted jumping out at cars with 4 teenagers in them in the Elfers area, and they smelled it. In 1969, a Bigfoot was spotted in a small town west of Hollywood, Florida, a number of times. In 1971, in Big Cypress Swamp, the Everglades, Florida, a group of archaeologists saw a Bigfoot, 8 feet tall. It left a horrible odor and a 17-inch footprint. In 1971, in Greenville, Mississippi, there was a report of 4 Bigfoots in somebody's yard. August of 1971, west of Fort Lauderdale, in a rural area, an animal rabies control officer checking reports of animals saw a Bigfoot. And 2 cops in the area looked in a deserted house and saw a Bigfoot swinging, a Bigfoot in the house, and it escaped them by swinging through orange trees outside and escaped. 1971 to 1978 in Boggy Creek and the Boggy Creek Fook Monster. This is made famous by a movie in 1972, The Legend of Boggy Creek. The Ford family from Jonesville in 1971 said that an ape man attacked their house. The man escaped from this thing that was outside and got him, and he went into the emergency room with scratches all over and in shock. Footprints were found later in the month by motorists who also saw the same Bigfoot on the highway close by. Then a 14-year-old shot it in the face. The sheriffs searched, they hunted it, and they said, we don't know what it could have been. 7 foot tall, 3 feet across in the chest, runs very fast on 2 legs, covered in hair. Bad smell. Had been seen several years before in the same area. 7 foot tall, like a naked man covered in hair. They found tracks and scratch marks on the door. They found the window damaged, and this family moved. But as a result, Bigfoot tourists invaded the town. Attacks in the area. In 1977, pigs were killed. In 1978, prints were found. In 1978, a 10-year-old shot at a 7-foot Bigfoot. Reports go back to the 1930s and the moonshiners. People describe a gorilla man with long arms, hairy, 17-inch footprints, with dermal ridges, and a small ball of the foot and no arch. Around 800 pounds, 10 feet tall, and a really bad odor. Animals on the farms were found mutilated. 2 prize hogs, over 200 pounds each, went missing. They followed the tracks to the remains of the hogs in the swamp. They had large bites taken out and scratches, and their organs were removed, but it seemed like they were killed for sport and not for food. The neighbors had Dobermans, and the Dobermans were discovered with every bone in their body broken, and they were in the yard. People heard the Dobermans go crazy. By the time they got outside, the dogs were dead. The creature got more and more aggressive as the population in the area increased. The local cops will not discuss it. In 1974, January 9th, in Hollywood, Florida, a guy hit a Bigfoot with his car. It was an 8-foot tall Bigfoot. It was under its car, but it got up. It threatened the driver, who fled. He called the cops. The cops came and found blood and hair under the car. At 2:20 a.m., the cops saw a figure on the road, and he yelled at it to stop. when he got close enough, he realized it was a Bigfoot. He shot at it, and it fled at 20 miles an hour. In 75, January 23rd, in Merriman, Florida, a rookie cop saw a Bigfoot, so you know how that was received. In 75, February 2nd, in Cape Coral, Florida, a 9-foot Bigfoot was shot once, got away. 75, March 6th, Lake Okeechobee, I can't read my writing, Florida. A couple hit a Bigfoot on the road. The Bigfoot disappeared, but the car had a huge dent in it. In 75, March 24th, Dade County, Florida, 2 guys saw a Bigfoot, 9 feet tall, rock a car with a screaming guy inside of it. The man jumped out. The lights of their car scared the Bigfoot away, and they reported all of this to the Public Safety Department. In 75, June 7th, in Venice, Florida, a 12-year-old was wakened up by a noise of his pet ducks going crazy. He found a 6-foot Bigfoot leaning in on the ducks, like to get them. The cops were called. They found huge prints. 76, Holiday Park, Florida. 13 people on a tour boat saw a 7-foot skunk ape on the grass in a swamp. It waded in the water to within 6 feet of the boat. It walked with a limp, and it was about 4 feet wide. Its head was like an ape. In 76, June 18th, Punta Gorda, Florida. This is in the Daily Herald News. There were many sightings in the Grove City area. 3 kids saw a Bigfoot twice. It was 7 foot tall, long hair. It growled. It was also seen by a deputy drinking at a pond. The Bigfoot, not the deputy. In 77, January 20th, Natchez, from the Natchez Democrat and in the Arkansas Gazette and in a number of other local papers, cops were flooded with reports of a giant hairy man-ape growling at dogs and fleeing from cars. Large prints were found, broken trees were found. 3 people in a house saw a hairy Bigfoot more than 6 feet tall, dark, naked, and limping. And another one near the Mississippi River got in the water and swam away. It was a good swimmer. February of 77, a caretaker on a golf course in Delray Beach, Florida, saw a 7-foot Bigfoot with bad odor, but that was Donald Trump. No. Was drinking from a pond at the second tee. It had shaggy hair, very wide shoulders, and it disappeared into the woods. The caretaker left bananas, and they were gone 4 hours later. Cops, ridiculed the whole situation. The animal control guy said, it's a guy in a gorilla suit, but no. April 77, Moon Lake, Florida. 3 guys in a truck saw a 9-foot Bigfoot. It leaped across the road in front of them. July 21st, 1977, Key Largo, Florida. 2 guys saw a Bigfoot in a field, saw it 3 times. It was in the local paper. October 5th, 1977, from the Sentinel Star, Orlando, Florida. A Bigfoot was seen by a hitchhiker off the highway. A nursery security guard also saw it. It left tracks. The sheriff was called. He said, I've been a law enforcement officer for 20 years here, and I don't remember any reports of monsters. Flying saucers, yes, but I don't recall any monsters, meaning before this. November 15th, 1977, the Evening Telegram from Superior, Wisconsin. It went to United Press. A 67-year-old Baptist minister who had not had a drink in 40 years, saw Bigfoot at the Ocala National Forest. He was cutting wood and saw about an 8-foot tall Bigfoot with long dark hair, flat nose. He ran to his truck for his axe. When he came back, the Bigfoot was gone. March 6, 1978, rural Alabama, a woman heard shrill screaming from the woods by her house. She called her brother. He heard it too. All of their animals were in a panic. Their dogs fled. The cops arrived and saw a 7-foot, 400-pound Bigfoot. 1978, March, Fort Walton Beach, Alabama. This is in the paper. A Bigfoot was sighted at the river. 1979, in March, rural Flower Lake in Tunica, Mississippi. A couple heard and saw an 8-foot tall Bigfoot outside in the woods near their house. He armed himself The man did, and lay in wait, and he shot at the Bigfoot that night. The Bigfoot tried to get in their house, and the next morning they found prints 18 inches long. In the United Press International, July 2nd, 1980, from Altoona, Florida, 18-inch prints were found by a different person. The prints at the Ocala National Forest, the cops said there was a hoax, but the stride was 4 feet. An analyst said that it was made by something about 12 feet tall and 1,000 pounds, and it wasn't fake. In 86, in Georgia and Alabama on the border, from the news from Somerville, Georgia, a ginseng hunter was followed by a creature like Bigfoot that was injured, and the guy was frozen and threw up, which is interesting because that's related to the infrasound. You're not always able to hear it because it's below the ability of the human ear, but it causes a vasovagal thing, and people do throw up from it. And he reported it to the cops. In 89, Birmingham, Alabama, Bigfoot was spotted at a dumpster. It went into the woods. 2 people in a car saw it. In 92, in January, Stephenville, Texas, an 8-foot Bigfoot with long arms jumped over a highway guardrail and ran across the road. In 97, a tour bus of people in Okeechobee, Florida, saw a Bigfoot. A cop was called, and he got a picture of the Bigfoot fleeing. It's in the book. In the year 2000, at the Mayaca State Park in Florida, an anonymous woman sent a letter with 2 pictures to the sheriff in Sarasota and said a Bigfoot was in her backyard taking apples off her back porch. It was more than 7 feet tall, very hairy, looked like an ape person, had a bad odor. 2004, July 8th, Clinton, Alabama. A skunk ape was reported with footprints left in a peach orchard. In 2005 in Arkansas, the folk monster again. At least 6 sightings along US 167 near the Okeechobee River. In Arkansas, there's a database that has 53 sightings, including 2 kids who were chased while riding a motorcycle. Men went back later and found unidentifiable poop. The report was on a website, online. Thousands of sightings. There are audio reports and 9/11 calls recorded of panicked people. 2013, Pine Island, Florida. A guy got a picture from a boat of a Bigfoot swimming. It's in the book. June 2013, in Mayaca River, Florida. There's a video online from the Huffington Post. I could not find it. I don't know what to say. I couldn't find it. 2014, from Tampa, a picture was sent to the Huffington Post. John Rodriguez saw Bigfoot up to the armpits in a swamp, and he took a photo. People made fun of him and said it was a hoax, but he's adamant that it was not a hoax. 2016, April 19th, in Palm Beach, in the Palm Beach Post, 2 guys claimed they took a video of an 8-foot tall Bigfoot. May 2016, Gainestown, Alabama. A family tells authorities, come get the Bigfoot out of our yard or we're going to kill it. It's driving us crazy. See what they have to say. And there's all this photography, and it's hard to see, and I'm not going to show it to you. You're going to have to buy the book and do David Childress a favor because it's very difficult to see these pictures. Yeah, they're hard to see. In May, a Gainestown, Alabama man said he and his family were tired of dealing with a huge hairy hominid and were threatening to shoot it unless officials came to capture and remove it. He was asleep on his cousin's sofa after a family reunion. At 3:30 a.m., he was awakened by family dogs going crazy, one yelping like it was hurt. Something crawled onto the front porch and he sat up to look out the window. What I saw was unforgettable and unbelievable. It was maybe about 800 pounds. It smelled of cheese gone bad. It never turned, so I couldn't see its face. It was squatting down right in front of me. I guess it was too big to stand up straight on the porch. I don't know why it was there, but we left the empty beer and soda cans and leftover food scraps in a couple of trash bags to be thrown out the next day. The lights were on, so I could see it clearly. It had brown and red hair, and back was very muscular, 16-inch feet, 5-foot-long arms. He was not able to get a picture despite observing the animal for 20 minutes as his cell phone was charging. When the creature left, it leaped to the ground, crossed the 30-foot road in 2 strides, and went down the ravine. But they complained that this thing was terrorizing their pets, which they had to keep indoors, and they know they just want somebody to catch it or kill it or to do something. Prints were left, footprints and handprints, all over the place. So something was there. They don't know what it was. 2017, a guy driving near the Ocala National Forest in Florida, north of Orlando, a Bigfoot strode across the road, 9 foot tall, long hair, disappeared into the woods. See what I mean about these stories all start to sound exactly the same, which is just too damn weird. 2018, the annual Skunk Ape Festival is held in Okeechobee, Florida. There has never been a documented attack, but a lot of people go into the Everglades and never come out. Not everyone who sees it reports it is the other important thing to know. Chapter 7, Bigfoot in the Southwest. Many are seen in the mountains of New Mexico and eastern Arizona forests. I mentioned before, Arizona has the Mogollon monster. Mogollon. In the Southwest, it's mostly a wilderness of desert. There are mountains and forests and canyons, but it is really sparsely populated. September 2nd, 2006, the White Mountains, the Apache Nation, Arizona, heavily forested on the Mogollon Rim from Flagstaff to New Mexico. It's named for the Spanish governor from 1712. Ignacio Flores Mogollon. It's the largest ponderosa pine forest in the world. It's almost 100% unpopulated. There are Bigfoot reports from there for many, many years, from Flagstaff and the small towns on the edge of the forest. The Mogollon monster is what it's called. It's an ape-like, human-like thing walks on 2 legs, more than 7 feet tall, covered in hair, has a bad odor. People even ponder, does it eat skunk glands on purpose or cover itself with skunk gland secretion on purpose? It smells so bad. Stories say the creature is nocturnal, omnivorous, territorial, sometimes very violent. It's generally reported to walk with wide, inhuman strides, leave behind footprints measuring 22 inches in length, can mimic birds, coyotes, and other wildlife, emit unusual whistle sounds, explore campsites after dark, build nests out of pine needles, twigs, and leaves, hurl stones from locations that are hidden from view. The creature has also been said to decapitate deer and other wildlife prior to consumption. In numerous reports, the monster has been said to emit a blood-curdling scream, described as sounding like a woman in great distress. Accounts of the creature regularly describe an eerie silence prior to the encounter, an appreciable stillness in the woods that commonly surrounds predatory animals. 1903, from the Arizona Republican, the Bigfoot is seen near the Grand Canyon, white and gray. It was drinking the blood of 2 cougars, and it screamed at the witnesses and fled. In Susan Farnsworth's book, The Mogollon Monster, the Arizona Bigfoot, there's a 1923 story of a trapper near the Mexican border hunting one of the last of Arizona's grizzly bears that escaped from a trap by chewing its own foot off. It was stalked. The trapper guy, was stalked by something. He saw a Bigfoot on 2 legs. He confronted it. It charged his horse. He shot at it, emptied its rifle. The Bigfoot fled, but it wasn't dead. And later, the guy realized that his powder in his gun was bad. In 1924, in a ranch near Flagstaff, a 7-foot Bigfoot with an armload of corn pulled up turnips from a backyard. When he was confronted by the people who lived there, he fled and jumped a fence, still carrying the corn and turnips. In 1926, near Springville, Little County River, in Little Colorado River, which is very rural. 3 kids ran home saying they'd seen a naked, hairy guy chasing us. The mother had to hit the Bigfoot with the broom. While the kids fled into the house, she managed to get in and lock the door. They had no windows in this cabin. The Bigfoot screamed and circled the house. She got the shotgun out. She could see through the chinks in the log cabin. The Bigfoot kept attacking. It attacked the family dog. There was a big fight, and the Bigfoot fled, and the dog was dead. In 1938, east of Springerville, so this is the same area, a man and his 10-year-old son were checking traps. The dad was checking the traps. The son was at camp. He fell asleep, and when he woke, he smelled a horrible odor. He built up the fire and got his rifle. Rocks were thrown at him from the woods onto the fire, starting to put the fire out. So this kid was gutsy. He saw 2 eyes in the woods, and he said, "I'm armed, and I will shoot to protect myself." This is a 10-year-old. His dad came back and discovered that the pot that had their meal in it was missing. It must have been stolen while he was asleep, which is scary to think about. Large prints were on the ground, not bear prints. They heard blood-curdling screams. They left everything and drove to the cops. The next day, they found the empty pot on a hill above the campsite. In 1939, in the southeastern California desert, right next to Arizona and New Mexico, near the Borrego Sink, a prospector was confronted by a pack of gigantic silver-haired Bigfoots. He flared his fire, like he made it really grow, and it kept them at a distance. This was confirmed by another guy, a guy who was a desert nomad, whatever that is, who said that confirmed there was there were giant ape men in the area. So in did I write that wrong? No, this is right. In 1858, there was an unexplained murder. In 1870, a French settler was murdered. In 1887, a prospector was murdered. And 3 months later, a woman was murdered. And they were all murdered in similar ways, and nobody was around to have murdered them. In 1888, 2 hunters were attacked by a 6-foot beast, a hairy ape man. They found a cave with animal and human remains in the cave. Bigfoot cornered them. They shot it dead. The body was exhibited at the police station. The story about it was in the San Diego Union newspaper. So, is it real? We don't know. Locals and natives did their best to avoid that area. In 1940, the Ghost Ranch, north of Abiquiin, New Mexico, west of Santa Fe, owned by a guy called Arthur Pack. Georgia O'Keeffe, the painter, was taken with this area, bought a small house from Pack, explored 21,000 acres of the Ghost Ranch. It's where she painted her stuff. It's part of a 1766 Spanish land grant called the Piedra Lumbre, the Shining Rock. The locals called it Rancho de los Brujas, the Ranch of the Witches. And it's said to be haunted by evil spirits. Pack bought it in 1936. The spirits include a 6-foot-tall including number of 6-foot-tall earth babies covered in hair. They howl at night. The spirits include a ghost cow, ghosts of men killed in battle, sheep versus cattle ranchers, that battle, and the spirits of rustlers. There are many bones scattered about that O'Keeffe painted. Pack adopted her steer skull painting as his logo for his ranch. He donated the ranch to the Presbyterian Church. And it's pretty well accepted that these ghosts are really Bigfoot. 1945 in northern Arizona, at a Boy Scout camp, the kids were woken by Bigfoot noises. Standing less than 4 feet in front of one of them, 13 years old at the time, was a monster-like man. The creature was huge. Its eyes were deep-set and hard to see, but they seemed expressionless. His face seemed pretty much devoid of hair, but there seemed to be hair along the sides of his face. His chest, shoulders, and arms were massive, especially the upper arms, easily upwards of 6 inches in diameter, perhaps more. I could see he was pretty hairy, but didn't observe really how thick the body hair was. His face and head was very square sides and squared-up chin, like a box. Other story of Bigfoot trying to carry 2 scouts off in sleeping bags. So that's the third or fourth story we've heard of something similar to that. In 1951, in the foothills of the Pinaleno Mountains of Stafford, Arizona, ranchers on horses see not a bear, and it saw the ranchers, and it fled. November of 55, a kid was sledding while camping with his family. They went camping in the snow. He was sledding, and he heard something. Oh, now I'm getting the hiccups. Oh, God, I'm sorry. He heard something, and he slid down to go back to the camp and stumbled into the ice, stumbled onto the ice and into the water through the ice on a pond at the bottom of the sledding hill. He was almost unconscious from the cold, and he saw a Bigfoot. He passed out. The next thing he knew, he was found on the porch of the cabin where they were camping, safe and very wet, and he believes that the Bigfoot saved him. In 1962, the White Mountain Apache Reserve near Springerville, so this is another story from the same area, 3 people were hunting. They dropped off the dad, and then the mom and the kids drove a mile up the logging road, and he was going to hunt up to meet them. Their Cocker Spaniel in their car went nuts. They put on a leash on the dog and got out and smelt a horrible odor. The dog broke the leash and ran into the woods. They saw the dog running frantically back to them, being chased by a Bigfoot. The dog collapsed in their arms, and the Bigfoot threw a big rock on their car. The husband returned and said, "Get in the car." He returned at that moment. And the rock was enough to have killed him, but it landed where he'd been standing. I mean, he came and stopped, talked for just a second, and as he moved to get in the car, the rock landed where he had been standing. They fled and they never returned to that area. In 1963, near Flagstaff, Arizona, a truck driver and his wife were parked in a remote area for the night, and later the driver was found beaten to death, and the wife was clawed on her backs and legs. She said that an ape-like hairy creature had attacked them, and the cops said, well, it must have been a bear or a crazed hermit. There was a hint in the article that maybe she was assaulted, but, it's weird. In 1965, north of Winslow, a driver saw a charred man on the side of the road, and he hopped the guardrail. The driver turned around and went back to help the man, thought he was burned, and saw that he wasn't burned. He was black because he was an ape man. He was covered in black hair. He was only 3 feet tall and hairy with long arms, and it seemed young. They seemed like, is this a baby? He followed this thing into the bush, and it sped up until both were running, and suddenly he realized that he could be being led into a trap, the man realized, and he stopped, and he faced the sound of the running, but he couldn't see anything anymore. And he shot in that general direction, heard a scream, and saw a Bigfoot flee. In 1968, in Anthony, New Mexico, in the Chusca Mountains, close to Texas, and we're going to hear about the Chusca Mountains a lot, a couple was driving, saw Bigfoot, like an ape, eating roadkill. The woman said 2 friends living in the area had heard scratching at their window the night before and saw 2 Bigfoot that scared the daylights out of them. 2 Navajo shepherds shot an 8-foot Bigfoot, which ran with the help of 2 other Bigfoots. In January 21st of 1970, in Gallup, New Mexico, in the Independent newspaper, a report of four teens from Gallup driving near the Zuni Reservation saw Bigfoot running alongside the car at 45 miles an hour. They shot at it, which knocked it down, but it got up and ran away. It was almost 6 feet tall. In 71, two students from Northern Arizona University near Flagstaff were parking at 1 o'clock in the morning when a Bigfoot looked in the window. I don't know which is scarier, Bigfoot or a serial killer, the Zodiac. Many reports in this area of Bigfoot dumpster diving. In 1976, the book Bigfoot by Slate and Berry, two researchers, told of people camping in the Mojave in 73 who saw Bigfoot and smelled a really bad odor. In 73, west of Flagstaff, in a snowstorm, a couple stopped on the highway to read a road map late in the afternoon in a VW Beetle. They saw a huge figure running at them, hairy with no clothes, 10 feet tall. They fled in their car and it chased them, and it almost got them even though they were going 45 miles an hour. December 27th, 1973, Palmdale, California, a brother and sister saw a Bigfoot twice the size of a man, and it fled. They reported it. In the book Sasquatch Among Us by John Green, the researcher, in Arizona of 75, a guy saw a Bigfoot chasing his car. The guy stopped to look. He couldn't believe it and saw it again the next day. A huge hairy thing with long arms up on two legs. October 27th, 1975, two hunters near White Mountain Apache Reservation encountered a bear Bigfoot fighting. So a bear and a Bigfoot in a fight these hunters found in the middle of nowhere. And the thing was shrilly screaming like a woman. The bear fled. And then when the Bigfoot saw them, it went in the opposite direction and fled. And they realized that they were fighting over a stash of 6 headless deer that were hidden under brush. So the bear was probably trying to steal him, and the Bigfoot was defending him. The hunters got out of there as quickly as possible. In 76, in Pinon, New Mexico, deer hunters split up. One was resting, saw a Bigfoot, 7 feet tall, hairy, up on 2 feet, but the hunter was not seen by the Bigfoot, lucky for him. 1979, February, in northern Arizona, near the Hopi Reservation, a Hopi man saw a Bigfoot by a church. Every dog in the village was going crazy. It disrupted the services in the church. It was so bad. The cops were called, and they found fresh blood and huge prints up a steep mesa. Another Hopi had seen a Bigfoot there the night before. In 80, Sitting Bull Falls, New Mexico, two camping families, heard a horrifying scream in the night and saw a Bigfoot by a tree. 5 days later, a woman saw a 7-foot Bigfoot in an alley near her apartment. This is all close to each other. 1981, Chusca Mountains near Cove Navajo Reservation. The Lucachucay Mountains of Arizona, hunters' cousins split up. This is probably a really bad thing. They teach you that in the Scouts, you know. Always have a buddy. I could not believe what I was seeing walk downhill on 2 legs. The brush was about armpit high on the thing. By then the smell had reached me, which was awful. The thought of shooting it came to mind, but it walked too much like a human. I watched it walk down to the big trail, 80 yards into the forest. I made my way to the north towards the forest road and stayed on the road. I think it followed because of the movement I could hear in the brush while walking on the road. I shot once to scare whatever was moving in the oak brush. What I saw was a very large black, hairy being that walked upright on 2 legs. The upper body was broad and muscular. The hair appeared coarse. The smell was bad. I can only say what I saw that day was Bigfoot. In 82, Arizona deer hunters found a number of prints of different sizes, meaning a variety of different creatures at the same time, very far from their campsite, 20 to 30 miles south of the Grand Canyon. In 83, near Sedona, a teen fishing alone heard something walking and breathing. He hid and saw a 7-foot Bigfoot. Several times he found his dog shivering in the back of his tent and refusing to come out. In 89, near Sedona, Arizona, something that looked like a window suspended in midair, and that standing near this window on the rocky cliffs were two Bigfoot types who were 9 feet tall and seemed to be guarding the site. Frightened, the witness immediately fled the area, and while this may just be a late-night talk show radio he called into, there is occasionally this element of Bigfoot and interdimensional doorways. Very strange. A doorway, just window type thing, just hanging in the air. In 89, at the Chusca Mountains, 2 forestry techs were doing owl surveys, and they heard a weird call. It was yelling, but the distinct factor that myself and the technician had agreed upon was the yell was very deep and long, and after the vocalization, the echo itself retained the deepness of the sound as if it traveled through the canyon below us. It was definitely not a human that had the lung capacity to make such a sound. The forestry tech surmised the Bigfoot was responding to their sounds because they had been calling, imitating the vocalization of the Mexican spotted owl. He said, I've listened to several audio clips of recorded Sasquatch vocalizations and can see where one may have mistaken us for another creature of its kind. So they're going around doing a survey of owls and calling to try to find owls, and the Bigfoot started howling at them. Okay, where am I? 92, 93, Bigfoot spotted at many campsites in northern Arizona. In 95, campers in a tent heard screaming on Mount Graham, east of Safford, Arizona. Then something big prowling the camp at 2 in the morning. It happened the next night. It was always gone when they looked out. In 96, a doctor from Flagstaff was hiking and found curious rectangular structure made of intertwined branches and rocks, with 5 circular entrances, 2 big ones and 3 small ones. There was a deep growl from inside this weird structure, and he fled. In 97, near Flagstaff, 2 hunters reported a Bigfoot. In 98, the same doctor was driving in the same area, saw a white female Bigfoot cross the road. The next day, prints and hair were found. Others have seen this white Bigfoot in the area. The Navajo even report a blue Bigfoot near Flagstaff. In 2006, this doctor had a third encounter hiking in the same area, why? He found a cave in the cliffs, but it was occupied. And there had been recent reports of children talking in the remote area. And I would say, listen to the podcast Bigfoot Chronicles. And there are reports of conversations between Bigfoot that sound like a foreign language. It's no language. It's just communication. It's Bigfoot talk. In 2013, in January, the same doctor heard strange whistling, thumping, giggling, and metallic whooping from an area of a power plant, and later heard that city workers there had seen a Bigfoot, but the metallic whoop whoop, what was that? Were they dropped off by a helicopter was kind of the implication. In 98, there was an article in the Prescott Daily Courier. Lyle Van, a cowboy extra for 25 years in Hollywood, retired to Paulden, a tiny forest town surrounded by miles of wilderness, and he had seen Bigfoot often and had taken thousands of photos. The pictures are described as soft by journalists, in other words, difficult to see. He runs the Arizona Bigfoot Center. It still was active in 2018. In 2000, a father and son hiking on the Jacarillo Apache Reservation heard angry huffing near Dulce, New Mexico. There were several sightings. One, a 32-year veteran of the cops, saw a 14-foot tall Bigfoot leaning on an electric fence, which was off for inspection. They saw each other and they fled in opposite directions. The interview of the cop, his name was Hoyt, is on a documentary called Mysterious Creatures of the Southwest that can be found on DVD. 2001 Canyon de Chelly in Navajo Reservation, an 8-foot Bigfoot who hid from a driver who spotted it along the road. 2001 in August, a couple hiking on Chevelon Lake near Heber, Arizona, which is very remote. They were picking blackberries and stopped by a patch to fish, and they saw a Bigfoot family eating the berries. They dropped their rod and shot a gun into the air, and the Bigfoot family fled. June 17th, 2001, Chusca Mountains, a duck hunter driving over a washboard road. When a Bigfoot stepped across the road, it was 6 foot tall. 2002 in New Mexico near Gallup, an electrical worker saw a Bigfoot, gave a detailed description. He was overcome with fear. He got another guy to return with him to do the repairs he needed to do, and they found prints, took photos of them with a 4 to 5 foot stride. October 2002, a Bigfoot was seen crossing the Highway 95 near Bullhead City. 2003, on the Navajo Reservation in the Chusca Mountains, 2 hunters heard horrible screams and left. 2004, Seligman, Arizona, several reports. The Mescalero Apache Reservation, a Bigfoot was spotted walking around trailer homes. A large hand came in a window and grabbed a bowl of food. Oh my God. It had been stalking the town for 2 to 3 years, following people. They often found tracks. In 2005, in July, near Sedona, campers saw a Bigfoot, gray, 5 feet tall, that was clicking stones together. In 2005, November, Crown Point, New Mexico, east of the Navajo Reservation, a Bigfoot 6 feet tall crossed the road. 2006, October 6th, Concho, Arizona, a doctor driving to a ranch saw a 6 foot tall Bigfoot crossing in front of him. September 2006, White Mountain Apache Nation, several police reports. I mean, this is just, when people say it's rare, it's not rare at all. A TV crew came at this report. The Apaches said they'd had no negative encounters. There had been increased numbers of accounts of Bigfoot on the road, looking in house windows. Prints were found, hair was found, and other material was found. I think they were talking about scat. Casts were made by police, reporting people were not drunk, not hallucinating, not hoaxing, real citizens, according to police reports. Other reports of Bigfoot leaving an odor, an ape man, were reported by a cop. In the same area in 1999, campers heard screams and pounding on hollow logs, and the next morning they found a tree torn apart. Let's see here. Will I read this or will I not? No, this is just the same thing. I'm not even going to read it. In 2007, White Mountain Apache Reserve, a guy was looking for elk horns, saw an 8 foot tall Bigfoot walking through the thorns like nothing. The guy ran into people who were a TV crew that were there. They were in the area doing a Searching for Bigfoot documentary. He showed them where he'd seen it. I don't think they got it on video. 2007, there were a number of sightings in the Mogollon Monster area. This guy had a remote property. He had created a small cabin with a camper, and then he had it on struts, kind of. And he came to find it turned upside down, and he had to use a truck winch to turn it over. This happened again. So he set up a trail camera, and he came back to a photo of something big and hairy with hands, not paws. At the same time in the area, a hiker found a deer torn apart and left post haste. In 2008, near Christopher Creek, a camper from Phoenix in the rain, she got out of the camper to investigate weird sounds of a large animal, found nothing, returned back inside to read until the rain was over. In about 5 minutes, a huge limb, like a javelin, was thrown at the camper from the forest and broke the side mirror of the camper. That night, she heard some large animals sniffling. The next morning, found crackers removed from a pack. Now, not a pack of crackers torn apart, but opened and crackers taken out, and a couple of sausages removed from a package of tin foil, but the foil was not torn. She returned to the area in the next week. This is what I don't understand. I would never go back outside again. She returned the next week and heard loud screaming, and also heard, the screaming was also heard by another group of people. In 2008, at Homestead along the Little Colorado River, an 8-foot-tall Bigfoot was seen walking the highway. 2009, in Reserve, New Mexico, a Forest Service worker in a remote area saw a Bigfoot and reported it officially. In 2009, a couple from Oklahoma, camping near Taos, New Mexico, got up early to leave. The wife saw a figure of somebody outside their camper. Hang on. And at the window, she got 3 pictures, and you can see the shadow. The husband got a gun and went out and heard something walking away quickly, and he realized how high the windows of the camper were, and too high to see a person. But both saw this thing from the chest up, so it was really tall. There were large tracks left in the gravel. Photos are on the website, the Bigfoot Research Organization. In May 2010, the Mogollon Rim, Arizona, a dad and his son at daylight saw a very large man in a gorilla suit walk across an opening in the trees. It was at least 7.5 feet tall with an extremely wide stride. In August of 2010, a camper in the area woke to strange noises, 2 sticks being banged together every 2 seconds exactly. The sound moved close and back and close and back to their campsite. He got up and got his gun, and as soon as he went outside, the knocking stopped. He shone a light on a tree and got a whoop whoop, and more than one creature was out there. There was no odor. His wife got up, and the creature just left. In 2011, in March, north of Thoreau, New Mexico, Bigfoot was seen on the side of the road, a very tall person, and then realizing it wasn't human. It crossed in front of a truck, and it looked like an ape that was 7 feet tall. July of 2011, a man and his family in a car in the Chusca Mountains near Arizona, very remote, saw a dark figure near a pond, flashed their car lights at it. It ran. It was huge, on 2 legs, 8 feet tall, wider than a human, and they said they were the biggest skeptics in the world until that day. July 2011, Knoll Lake, Mogollon Rim, a mother and 2 kids were camping alone in the weekend, 7 miles remotely from everybody. They were awakened by an angry female with a smoker's voice screaming in short bursts, is what they sounded like. They were 5 to 10 second bursts every 10 to 20 seconds. They heard sounds of multiple animals fighting. In 2012, 2 people on motorcycles were camping at Jacob Lake, North Rim of the Grand Canyon. They were woken at 2:30 in the morning by screams, made the hair on the backs of their necks stand up. In 2013, a family camping near Payson, Arizona. The father was woken by an unearthly sound. Both their dogs went into paralysis, perfectly still. Screaming sounded like it was through a PA system. The wife woke up and heard it. The next morning in the woods, they found a shelter 15 inches long by 5 inches wide, made of dead trees like a teepee. He could not lift the trees himself. He said it would take several people. The trees had been cut with a saw, but they were the wrong kind of trees, and there was nothing or nobody around and no stumps. They were carried in from someplace. It's very strange. Next night, the dogs were on edge growling. The wife heard moving around in the woods. Nothing more. October of 2013, driving from Denver to Albuquerque, a doctor and his wife. It's always, a hunter and his wife, a doctor and his wife. How about a physical therapist and her husband stopped and for a gas break or bathroom break, and the guy saw a Bigfoot behind the gas station, 10 foot tall and hairy. It walked away. It had very heavy footfalls, and it sounded like dropping sacks of potatoes over and over. It was extremely fast, had a horrible odor, had massive human-like hands. The doctor said he was scared stiff and he couldn't sleep for several days after. 2014, Canyon Point Trail, Mogollon Rim. A woman hiker came on a creature drinking water. It was Bigfoot. She yelled and waved at it and it ran off. June of 2014, near Sedona, 2 men and a son of one of them were hunting, found a smelly Bigfoot, threw rocks at them. They turned to leave and heard something large charge at them. They checked the area later and found depressions in the grass with a huge stride, approximately 8 feet. It moved faster than a human could run. July of 2015, near Phoenix, the Mogollon Rim, a woman and 2 kids were woken by whooping and then wood knocks 8 to 10 seconds apart in a kind of a call and response pattern. Earlier, they'd been rapping on their windows, and they were the only people in the area for 12 miles back in the woods. June 2016, Coconino National Forest near Strawberry, Arizona. A camper saw Bigfoot. He thought it was a large kid on a bike. It was going so fast at a distance. And then as it got closer, he realized it was not a human at all, and it was not on a bike. He said the interesting thing about it was running, but when it ran, its head didn't bob like a human's head does. In 2017, Dulce, New Mexico, a Bigfoot was terrorizing a ranch, trying to get into the house. It attacked a camper trailer. It left a big dent on the side like knuckles. It was investigated by the cops. So, nothing ever comes of these stories. It's just, if that happened to me, I'd be traumatized for life. Chapter 8, Post-Millennial Nation. Canada has Sasquatch stamp now. Several states have legislated Bigfoot protection laws. In August of 2000, the San Juan National Forest, Colorado, experienced hiker saw an 8-foot-tall, huge-shouldered, ape-like, human-like, hairy creature making mumbling sounds with a smaller one behind it coming out of the woods. They saw the hiker and went back in the woods. 2001, May, Hope, BC, Canada, Bigfoot spotted. September, near Mission, BC, a hunter was sitting on a stump. He heard footsteps and he heard chattering, and he saw a Bigfoot. They saw each other and they both froze. The Bigfoot left. It was 7.5 feet tall, smelly, and hairy. How am I doing here? Oh, great. August of 2001, near Eugene, Oregon, a guy delivering bundles of papers for the paper carriers to pick up in a rural area got out to pee, saw Bigfoot, and he said, if I hadn't already peed, I would have. The Bigfoot walked away. It was 7 feet tall, had no neck. He said its head and shoulders were like a mountain. And after that, he drove a different route from ever after. November 2001, in the Cascades, a guy and his wife near the tree line in a Jeep saw a Bigfoot running on the road ahead. It was 7 feet tall, more than 300 pounds, hairy like a giant gorilla. They stopped where the Bigfoot had gone into the woods. They felt they were being watched. They left and they never came back to the area, and the wife will not go into the woods ever again. The only sensible person in this book. 2002, Grand Forks, British Columbia, 2 15-year-olds were camping with their family, and a guy and his friend. They took a walk in the woods. They heard heavy breathing. They shone a light. It was not a bear. It was 8 foot tall. The boys know this because they were both 6 feet tall. It was hairy like a human, but hairy. It stared, and then it ran. They couldn't sleep. August of 2002, near Bellingham, Washington, a man was walking his dog. He took a pit stop on the highway to walk the dog. The dog started freaking. It saw a Bigfoot. He tried to follow the Bigfoot. The dog wouldn't move. The odor was awful. The dog kept backing up. So the guy decided to get into the car. And as he started the car, there was a crashing of vegetation and a bursting towards them, like the Bigfoot came back to chase him, but he hit the gas and got away. July of 2003 in Van Zandt, Washington, on Mount Baker at 3 p.m. Youngsters were camping. They were on a 10-acre backyard. Their house was at the foothills, had 10 acres, so they were in the wilderness, but they were in technically their backyard. They were 90 feet from the house. They knew there was an old trailer in the woods with a fire pit, so they decided to pitch their tents there. Two of the friends went to get firewood, and in a minute returned screaming that they'd seen some sort of huge hairy thing in the woods. They stayed anyway because it started to rain. Summer of 2003, near Vancouver, British Columbia, 3 hikers met a Bigfoot on the trail. They stared at each other, and then Bigfoot ran. June of 2004, Snoqualmie Pass, Washington, a trucker saw an 8-foot Bigfoot on the side of the road. Looked like an ape, but as he passed it, the Bigfoot began to run alongside the truck and keep pace with the truck. He got closer and closer to the passenger side door. The truck driver made eye contact at one point as they both went along. The Bigfoot scared him so badly, he said, "I almost messed my pants right there." The Bigfoot suddenly just ran into the woods and was gone. It was a game. So he was so spooked, he drove nonstop to his destination in Spokane and didn't make any of the stops he was scheduled to stop at. August 2004, Leavenworth, Washington, 2 cars were forced to stop by a Bigfoot in the middle of the road. In June of 2005, in Duval, Washington, a man saw a Bigfoot from a windowsill, and it was lurking in a rural swamp in the area, a 7-foot tall Bigfoot. In November of 2005, a backpacker from Vancouver, Washington, on Silver Star Mountain, Gifford Pinchot National Forest, thought it was a rock, but it stood up and walked away, and he took 2 pictures. He thought he was taking a picture of a snowfield with a rock, and then he took another picture when the thing stood up and it looks like a Bigfoot. 2005, Seneca, Illinois, in a rural area near the DuPont chemical plant. I told you there's a wilderness area. There were 4 encounters within miles of each other with not a man. An 8-foot tall Bigfoot with a terrible odor. 2006, David Pilautes writes his book, The Hoopa Project. 2007, the Harrison Hot Springs near Vancouver Island, British Columbia. Bigfoot was on a log scooping fish out of a river when people came on it, and it wasn't a bear, it was an ape man that was 7 feet tall. In 2007, at White Swan Lake, British Columbia, a hunter on a log was eating his lunch, taking a break, smelled an odor, turned around and saw a huge Bigfoot looking at him. 2008, Chelan, Washington, on a trail, a biker, trail bike, saw a taller than 8-foot tall bipedal, hairy, fast thing. 2009, Langley, British Columbia, a woman driving saw a silver Bigfoot, 6 foot tall, very stocky. And then I have a list, and I'm just going to rush through this list as fast as humanly possible. I want to finish with this. I only have 2 pages. So these are all Bigfoot sightings, because people just don't think this is really uncommon. Wait till you hear this. 2010, Duncan, BC, 9 feet tall. 2011, Genoa, Arkansas, 6 foot tall. 2011, Medford, Oregon, 7 feet tall. 2011, Tippett City, West Virginia, huge. 2012, Tulalip, Washington. 2012, the Yukon. 2013, Stanwood, Washington. And it threw rocks at a crew. 2013, Nederland, Texas. 2013, Tehama, California. This guy thought he had a new unfriendly neighbor that threw rocks in his yard until he saw the Bigfoot. 2014, Virginia. Got pictures. 2014, North Carolina. 2014, 4 sightings in Alabama. 2014, Tennessee. The police were called and said there's a Bigfoot breaking into my house. A video was made in 2015 in Alberta, Canada. A construction crew watched Bigfoot throw a tree like a javelin, and you can hear one of the crew members saying, "Holy shit, he just threw the effing tree," and the thing was 10 feet tall. And they've got this on video. 2015 Oklahoma, a Bigfoot destroyed cars in a used lot. He did it 4 times, and there were no cameras. In Oklahoma, the Department of Wildlife said, "This is not indicative of any wildlife species I know." 2016 in Maryland, near the suburban airport is the name of it, a bipedal 6-foot creature. 35 sightings in Maryland since 1970 in a wildlife refuge. 2016 in Missouri, an 8-foot tall Bigfoot. Bow hunters saw it earlier eating deer guts from a pile. 2017, North Dakota, woman sees one, and the next day the tracks were found 18 inches long by 8 inches wide with a 4-foot stride. The track went 7 miles. The odor remained on the track. There was an eerie silence with the odor, and it was too elaborate to be a hoax to carry it that far, that many miles. 2017, Northern Idaho, Dr. Jeff Meldrum says the story is a possibility that it's true. They saw a Bigfoot chasing a deer on the side of the road as they drove along a remote highway. The deer ran in front of the car and got hit by the car. They called the sheriff. And Dr. Meldrum says that at that particular time of year, it would not be unusual that a Bigfoot would be hungry enough to chase a deer. The most common place to see a Bigfoot. Now, this blew my mind. The most common place and time to see a Bigfoot is driving on a remote highway at night on the side of the road, or in the wilderness near a body of water. 2017, Lake Arrowhead, a woman sued the authorities to demand that they recognize the species Bigfoot when they would not believe her Bigfoot sighting. She was so offended that they were ruining her reputation by making fun of her in the media that she sued them. The history of Bigfoot kidnapping, harassment, murder, courageous acts, sexual assaults, antics, night stalking, trespassing, dumpster diving, spying. It's all in the history of Bigfoot. And he says that somewhere right now a Bigfoot is lurking in the shadows, keeping his eye on those who encroach on his territory and any nearby dumpsters. He knows his place in Bigfoot Nation, and it's a place in the shadows. For him, it's no big deal. The struggle for national sovereignty is over, except for the yelling and screaming. All I want to know is, have you seen this man? Okay. Oh, I wish I had my phone. You need to Google. Maybe I'll put it on my community feed. I saw a great bumper sticker on a car down the street. I'll put it on my community feed. I'll probably put it on before you ever see this video. So that's it. I just thought it would be a mind blower to see. I'm exhausted. I just did 3 hours, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. They say there are many more sightings. People don't even bother to report them because they're tired of being ridiculed. They don't want to be made fun of. They have a reputation. They work for the police, or they work for the government, or they're important, and they don't want to admit it. But I'd say we can pretty much generalize there's something out there. So, thank you for watching. Take my advice. Stay out of the woods, and until then, slán go fóill and sláinte.